All right, welcome to the first installment of a new podcast. This is the Jew and the Gentile. It is your job to figure out which one of us is the Jew and which one of us is the Gentile. And I'm not going to spoil it. You can guess, you can comment, you can place bets. Just kidding, don't place bets, unless you want to give me the money for that.
True.
But this podcast, we're gonna wrestle and talk about just different subjects that may not get the attention it deserves, in a Sunday setting or different daily life. Things that are important, but take some time and some study to wrestle with. And so we just wanted to make that available, and we really just wanted to have fun with it.
Pretty much.
Basically. And my name is Pastor Samuel, and this is Jesse Reckelberg, the legend himself. We've been friends for, I don't know, almost 3 years now, I think. Yeah, something like that. I first got here, and we just connected really fast and became quick friends. So we were like, you know what? We would hang out and we'd have lunch, and we just have good conversations. We're like, we should do something with this. So, first subject we decided to tackle is the subject of money. Mm-hmm. And so the title of Jew and the Gentile isn't just because I look very Jewish. And I guess you look very Gentile-ish?
I guess.
I don't know.
Like a Roman or something.
Yeah, the idea is that we're going to tackle these subjects from a worldly perspective, the Gentile perspective, and we're also going to tackle it from the Jewish perspective, which is, the kingdom perspective. But as well, all of these subjects, they're going to have three facets to them. The world, they're going to have the kingdom, and they're also going to have religion. These are all things that are happening at the same time with all these subjects, every subject, every day.
Right.
Every day, there's three perspectives that are coming at us that we can have, and they're actually all internally happening because we can't separate the world is inundating information in our lives. They're basically just brainwashing us, marketing their ideas to us every day.
Right.
Can't get away from that. You literally can't get away from it.
No.
And then we have religion. If you've been part of the church any amount of time, religion is going to be a part of that. And actually, religion and the world get along quite well.
Yes.
May have different flavors or different perspectives or different emphasis, but at the end of the day, it's the same. It's the same goal. It's the same end result,
right?
In my perspective. And so we as believers actually have to do a really good job of seeking first the kingdom. Whoa, that's a cool perspective. Seeking first the kingdom on all of these subjects and seeing God's perspective on it. And so, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. What does the world say about money? What does God say about money? What does religion say about money? Jesse Reckelberg, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Okay.
What are your thoughts? I just talked for 2 minutes straight, so.
Well, as far as money is concerned, obviously, a lot of people, we need money.
Yep.
We need money for a lot of different things, right? We need it for our personal finances, for buying a home, taking care of your family, buying businesses, running businesses. So money is one of those things that is a necessary thing.
Yeah.
And we, a lot of Christians, they like to push it away and say, well, that is of the world. So,
right.
Because they, obviously they, the scripture that says money is the root of all kinds of evil. And they take
Well, that's what, but you said it correctly.
Right.
How many times do people say it incorrectly?
Is the root of all evil. It's not. It's roots of all kinds of evil.
And it's the love of money
that
is the root of all kinds of evil.
Right, exactly. So the problem is a lot of people, they especially Christians, we try to push it away as it's this evil thing, and that's not necessarily the truth.
Right.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's just like any other thing.
right.
It's a physical thing. Like
Yes.
it can be used for evil.
Right. And so can a shovel. I
Right.
mean, obviously, I think what happens is a lot of people they look at tools as a useful thing to get a job done, and I think we tend to forget that money is actually a tool.
Yes.
So
And it's one of the subjects that the church has abdicated their power from.
exactly.
I think there's a lot of subjects that happens with, but three big ones that I see is politics, money, and purity, sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that pretty prevalently through culture today. Everybody, all of y'all who watch, everybody I know who loves the Lord has at some point complained to me about the culture of our world right now. And it's primarily because
Absolutely.
we don't talk about these three subjects.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I actually, okay, this is going to sound weird, but I love money. Not like it's like my number one, right? Like
Right.
it's not the ruler of my life. Otherwise, I would not be a pastor
Right.
because, I don't know, newsflash everybody, this is not the quickest way to get rich. I love what it can do. I love what, in the hands of a righteous man,
Mm-hmm.
what money can do.
Right.
And the power that, that you can start businesses. One of my dreams is to build wells in Africa. Like, I don't even have to go. I could change an entire region just by, and it's so cheap. Like,
Right.
really? It's like 10 grand? Seriously?
Yeah, it's really
10 grand
expensive.
can change like
An entire
an
village.
entire village,
Mhm.
an entire surrounding region. And I'm like, dude, we could do that. We could so do that.
Right.
That's so easy.
Right.
I'm like, oh, give me 10 grand. Let's go. Right? And do you follow that guy? What's his name? The guy sent the video to you, and he. Oh, let me look because it's in my Instagram. He just goes around and gives money away. Jimmy Darts.
Jimmy Darts.
He.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely.
He just goes around.
He's actually a billionaire, but doesn't have any money because he gives it all away.
He gives it all away.
Yeah.
He goes and he changes people's lives. And I was like, man, I'm watching these videos. I'm like, dude, this guy has to love Jesus. Like, there's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way. And then the other day, Chris Valentin had him on his podcast.
No way.
And he's a BSSM alumni. He went to
No way.
Yeah. I was like,
no way. That
yes!
is sick. Dude.
I was like, dude, I knew it. I knew he loved the Lord. And just like, that's so perfect. I was like, this is so cool. But he goes and changes people's lives. Like, he told a story of just hanging out with a homeless guy for a day. He said, hey, he went up to a guy in a tent on the beach. He's like, hey, you want to be my friend for a day? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, if you could do whatever you wanted to do. He was a veteran, homeless veteran.
Right.
Whatever you wanted to do, what would it be? He was like, man, I'd like to go in a hot air balloon and go deep sea fishing. And so he's like, all right, I'll meet you back here in 2 hours. We're gonna go in a hot air balloon. He's like, what, really? He's like,
really?
yeah, let's go, dude. Like, I'll meet you back here in 2 hours. Takes him in a hot air balloon, and then later goes deep sea fishing, and it changed his entire life.
Really?
Like, he's still connected with him, and now he's off the streets. He's off,
Yes.
and he has a job. He has a car. He's living life, and he's loving it. All because he took the time and the money to be his friend and get him out of his perspective of the world sucks.
Yes.
And the best one was this guy, this blind guy and partly deaf man couldn't get a job because nobody wanted to train him.
Mm-hmm.
And his dream job was to be a car salesman. But nobody would hire him. So he goes down to Mexico and buys brooms and mops and brings them back and sells them at this gas station for like $6. And so that's how he's providing for his family. And so he saw this on the news and he was like, man, I got to help this guy out. Like, I got to do something for this guy. So he goes there. And what he does is he he sees how kind people will be, and then if they're really kind, like it gets even more
It's
extravagant.
more of a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Like one video, he was like, "Hey, do you want $1,000, or would you want to give $10,000 away?"
Mm-hmm.
Like 5 people are like, "I'll take the grand,"
Right.
but one guy's like, "Really?" I was like, "I want to give 10 grand away," and he went and gave 10 grand away, found somebody, and it was like this beautiful exchange, right? It was just so beautiful. I was like, this is the best part of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after he did that, he's like, for being so kind, you get 10 grand too. And he was like, what?
Exactly.
So everyone's just crying, right?
Yeah,
Like
'cause everybody's freaking out.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so this guy, this blind and partly deaf guy, he goes and he's like, hey, I don't have $6. I only have $5. He's like, oh yeah, let's do it. And then he was like, here is, so he bought it, and then he came back after he talked to his, I think he gave him $500 for being nice. Okay, $500. He was freaking out. I mean, still $500.
Right, it's $500 again. Exactly.
Yeah, and
I'll
so
take it.
then he posted on his social media. He's like, hey, let's really help this guy out. And he got 200 of his followers to come, and they bought up everything, all of his inventory, and people donated within 24 hours $100,000
Really?
to this man. I was like,
it's so true.
I was like, whoa. And so they go back, and he's like, I've never had a line before. And they buy everything out. And he's like, I just wanted to let you know, we really we wanted to show you that, God loves you,
Yes.
and you're amazing. And you now have over $100,000. And he was like, what? He was like blown away. And then the best part is, then a guy who was following Jimmy Darts, he's like, oh, I own a car dealership and I want to give this guy a job. So he shows up that day. He says, hey man, I own a car dealership. I want to hire you right now. And he's now working.
Yes,
I was just like,
that is
this is so amazing.
Yes.
Like, just the ability that this guy has just to like how fun is that? Like, who doesn't want to do that?
Right. And and a lot of people don't know this, but like Isaiah 58, the latter half of it, the second half of Isaiah 58, it really talks about giving to the poor.
Yeah.
But most people gloss over it. There's 26 promises that the Lord gives you.
Yeah.
For helping poor.
Yeah.
Whether it's clothing them or giving them food or whatever the situation is, 26 promises that the Lord says, hey, these are yours if you just help the poor.
Right.
So when you look at something like this, Jimmy Darts, there is this perspective like, he's already living it. So he probably is not like, oh, I need to do this to get this. Yeah. But, he's actually living it. And, it's just flourishing in his life.
Once he became saved, he like became just radically generous. And he said, he was like, I used to drive around in my Santa suit because a friend said, hey, before you're Santa Claus in front of people, you have to be Santa Claus privately. So he drove around in the middle of August wearing a Santa suit, giving stuff away to people.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
His parents would give the kids $200 every Christmas, 100 for yourself, 100 to give away.
Wow.
So it was just instilled in him.
Yeah, that foundation.
Yeah. And that's what, like, if we're not supposed to actually prosper in the area of money, why does the Bible command us to be generous so often?
Right. Exactly.
Because in Timothy, that verse that everybody misquotes, right?
All of them?
It goes on to say, if you're rich, do these things. It doesn't say, okay, now get rid of your money because it's evil.
Yes.
So that can't mean what we think it means.
Right.
And in Genesis, it actually says that gold is good.
Right.
It literally says that. And I only found that out through reading this book. Thou shalt prosper. Highly recommend.
Very good book.
It's really good. It's written by a rabbi. So this is perfect for this podcast. But like really interesting insight, biblical insight from obviously a Jewish perspective, but so many things that we miss because we're not Jewish in that context. There's so many things that we don't pick up on. But the villainization of money, of business, of all of these things is really damaging to society. And you can see that in society, but I see that so much in the church
Mm-hmm.
that it's like, oh, like it's almost shameful to be wealthy.
Right.
It's almost like, oh, I have to hide the fact that I'm wealthy.
Yeah, and a lot of times people gloss over the idea that God can still, let's say, bless the Jewish people,
Yeah.
or even like somebody who's outside in the world, because those promises and those thought processes that it's for everyone to
Yeah.
access.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people will talk about the Jewish people, and they will talk about like, yes, they have all this money and et cetera, et cetera. But when you really think about it, like I was reading somewhere where it said 400 of the top bankers in the entire world, over 200 of them are actually from Jewish descent,
Yeah.
because they've already understand the principles
Yes.
of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And like I think like 60% of directors and that kind of stuff in Hollywood are also from Jewish descent.
Right.
So they already have tapped into,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what God says,
Yeah.
what money actually looks like.
Right, because it's like they've been brought up in it.
Right.
Like it's part of their culture to actually see as money is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like gold is good.
Right.
Business is good.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't separate it. Like in Western culture, like you separate your work from your friends
Mm-hmm.
and your family.
Right.
In Jewish culture, it's all the same thing.
Exactly.
It's all the same thing, and it's all good. It's not like, oh, I'm bothering you because I'm bringing up my business.
Right.
It's like, no, we're networking. We're actually like, you're going to be able to help me out. I'm going to be able to help you out. This is great.
Right.
Right. And so in the villainization of money and prospering and wealth keeps you from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because
Right.
it's like, oh, I don't want to bother you with this evil thing. I don't even, if I'm right. Because it may not even be a conscious thing that we think about or we think through. But if we have that as a foundation, we're not actually giving ourselves the ability or the capacity or the creativity to make money.
Amen.
Right?
Yes, definitely.
So
I totally agree with that. And I think a lot of times what we need to understand as a kingdom perspective is, again, money is a tool. Now, we can use it for our own personal benefits, which I don't believe God frowns upon.
right.
But more importantly, we can use it for kingdom benefits,
Yeah.
advancing the kingdom. A lot of times, like if I wanted to start a Christian foundation for, let's say, the homeless, what we typically do as Christians, we'll run to lawmakers and we'll plead for them to give us grants and money and all these different things so we can start this foundation, which might be a grand idea for a foundation. But if we come to them with, hey, we want to start this foundation, we have all the finances available,
Right.
we want your blessing, or maybe if we need to, switch some things around legislative wise,
Right.
we have this opportunity. Because a lot of times I think the world sees us as always searching for money instead of we have the money.
Yes. Dude, that is so true.
And it's like if we need to switch our perspectives, like what that actually looks like. So
Yeah. Because, I mean, I ran a business for a little bit.
Right.
You run a business.
Right.
How many times do Christians come in because they know you and they want a deal?
Right.
And
all the time.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all the time. It's like, and when I was running the bookstore, a guy from Nigeria would come in and talk to me. We'd just have a good time and talk. And he'd be like, Christians are so cheap. He's like, they always want a deal. It's so messed up, Samuel. It's so messed up. Because in Nigeria, if a Muslim friend goes to another Muslim friend's restaurant, the guy who owns it says, yo, no, don't pay. But the guy who came with his family says, no, I pay full price. I'm going to pay full price. Because here's the thing. when we are always wanting a deal. This is actually what you value.
Right.
You are actually more Christians
Yes.
actually value money more than they value relationship.
And they actually don't know it.
One of you needs to put your microphone closer, or you need to put your microphone
Oh,
away, because the level is just drastically
Just-
different.
Chunk me back and forth.
okay. There?
There?
Okay.
Sound good? Okay.
Sorry, continue.
No.
Yeah. So like I remember my brother-in-law started a business and he was just, he sold some merch to help, kickstart his business and
Right.
people are like, "Oh, I wanted you're not going to give me a deal on this." It's like, "Whoa, like," but people come to him for deals cuz he
Right.
does finishing work, whatever.
Right.
It's like people do that because they don't actually realize they value their money more than you.
Right.
Because if you actually valued that relationship, you'd be like, "No, I want to use this person
Mm-hmm.
and bless them because I have to pay somebody.
Right.
I want to pay you full price for the work you do."
Right.
So I'm like, "Oh, this is the love of money in your life."
It's so true. And we undervalue our own thought processes of, like you say, your brother-in-law. He could have easily given them the deal, but they don't understand their value of the output or the
Yeah.
work or the product that they're
Yes.
giving, and saying, well, this is how much it's worth.
Yeah.
And by always giving a person a deal, so my father-in-law, as an example in business, we never do sales, we
Yeah.
never do specials, because he always felt like if I undervalue my product, then
Right.
then it's not worth what I originally have the price set at.
Yeah.
So we've never changed that whole thought process. And as Christians, we have to understand, like, hey, what do we bring to the table?
Mm-hmm.
We have this ability to change the world,
Right.
with our finances, with whatever situation. God is giving us these tools.
Right.
How are we changing everything?
Right.
So,
Yeah. And so it just goes to, like, again, money is an object. And this is actually one of the reasons why I love the subject of money, because it's such a telling area of your life.
Yeah.
Because if your soul's prospering, your money will be prospering,
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Like if you're aligned with the Lord, if everything's going well in here, So part of this book says that Jewish people, the way they managed their finances is they had this cup, and they would pour into this cup,
Yep.
and then everything else, it would overflow. And they use that as an example. Like, you need to have overflow in your life where you're just being generous with people. Everything inside that cup is all of the things that you need to provide for your family. Your number one thing is always that you need to provide for your family.
Right.
But then you need to build it within your life that you're always just generous. You're always just able to give. You're able to give money away. You're
Right.
purposefully finding things to give to.
Right.
And so, like, if that's working, you're prospering. Because money is like building, Rabbi Daniel says, it's like building tunnels
Right. Yeah,
for
I love that
things
analogy.
to come back to you.
Right.
And it's not like you're doing it just for that, obviously, because you're 10 times out of 10, you're generous, it comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a ministry trip in LA, and I had $100 in my pocket because I just had gotten back from another ministry trip where I drove, so they paid me for the mileage and gas and stuff. But I had a couple $100 in my pocket. I saw this homeless guy, and I just felt like the Lord telling me, "Hey, go bless this guy." And so I went over and I gave him $100. To me, I'm like, it's really, I mean, okay, what? Like, I don't care, right?
Yeah.
This guy lit up and he was like, "Thank you so much." I'm like, "Hey, God loves you. That's all, man." And I was fine. I was like, I don't expect anything at all back from this. At the end of the trip, the stadium had a bunch of people in it, and then for some reason they were just giving tons of books away, and they asked a bunch of students to be in charge and help take them out, and they're like, "You get first dibs." So this was the time when the Passion Translation was all in the little booklet forms.
Yes.
And they were all like $15-$20.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't afford these things, man. So
Especially
I got
one at a time.
yeah. So I got like all of them.
Really?
Yeah, I got like almost all of them for free. And I was
Wow.
like, what?
And
This
back
is
then
so
it was probably,
cool.
what, about 10 of them? Or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, this is crazy.
That's awesome.
And so I'm just like, every time you give, you get it.
Right. And I mean, then a lot of times, a lot of people will say, well, if I give, I expect money back. But we forget that blessings come in all different areas.
Yeah.
So it can be a repaired relationship with a lost loved one,
Mm-hmm.
and that repairing will actually be multiple blessings, which also might include money. And so we can't have this perspective that we always are money focused,
Right.
because it's not always about the money. So, example, your books,
Yeah.
you didn't get cash back,
No.
but you got something that you valued back.
Yes. More.
Right. Yeah, actually more than the money.
More
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'd be like, oh man, I was always super interested in it, like because
Yeah.
I was really digging in and reading the Bible, and so it was just like something that was obviously I didn't need it. I mean, I was in ministry school, I had a Bible, I was getting poured into. I didn't need it,
Right.
but I wanted it,
Right.
and so it was like the Lord being like, here you go, man.
And it's hard too because with the way the world looks at money, a lot of people, they attach value to people who have money. So
Yes.
you're a billionaire, you're successful, and because you're successful, you're elevated.
Right.
And so what we tend to do is say, okay, that's the world's perspective on it, but success is not
Right.
equated to money.
Right.
And I think that kind of gets us tripped up as Christians.
Yes, and that verse that says, "May your soul prosper as you prosper." Right.
Right.
And so I really don't envy most people who are like super famous or whatever,
Right.
because I'm like, your soul is not prospering. Like you have tons of money,
Right.
you have tons of stuff, you have fame and whatever, but like I bet you're not as happy as people would think you were happy.
Right.
Like wealth is not just money.
No.
And there's a lot of rich people who are very poor.
Very poor.
And so, and there's that verse, I think it's in Psalms, where it says, all of the unrighteous riches are being stored up for you.
For you, exactly. So when I go to public places that I know that are not Christian organizations, I always pull up, let's say, I don't know if I can actually say that place, but if I stop, I can pull up and get a coffee, and I in my mind, I'm like, I love my coffee shop. This is my
Yeah.
coffee shop.
Yeah.
Because one way, shape, or form, it always flows back to me.
Right.
One way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that's like one big, I think that's a huge difference in the mentality of the kingdom, is that money is just part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Where the world, every motivation that I can remember growing up from the world is that you need to do this so you can make lots of money.
Right.
Like education, you need to get a good education so you can make lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go to college and pick this because you're going to make lots of money.
Right.
You need to, like all of these things. And it's like, okay, but like that's not really
No.
that's not going to make any, like, obviously I'd rather be rich than poor. Like I'd rather have money than be
Right.
poor.
Because you
But-
can do more things.
Yeah.
You can help more people, whatever the situation is.
But that's not like the main thing.
Right. It depends upon what's ruling you. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys have heard of P.T. Barnum, right?
Mm-mm.
Oh, P.T. Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm also reading a book by Sean Boltz. I can't remember what the name of it is at this point, but in this part he quotes P.T. Barnum with Barnum and Bailey Circus, and he said, "Money is a terrible master,
Yes.
but an excellent servant."
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful analogy of, so money is not necessarily an evil thing. It's
Mhm.
it's what is ruling you. Is money ruling your perspective? Is money ruling your giving to the kingdom, or
Right.
giving to a person on the street, or even your own family?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're buying your nieces and nephews some presents, and you're like, oh, I can only order $25, but yet this present they really want is $50. what is ruling you? What's ruling your heart?
Yeah.
Because it's a terrible master.
It is. And another great resource is The Prosperous Soul, written by Steve De Silva. And obviously, I mean, I think everybody knows this name, but Dave Ramsey. I binge watched that during COVID because they had it free on their website. So I watched all the things. It's super educational, super
Absolutely.
good, super fun, and so much insight. And it was such a biblical viewpoint. I was actually very surprised because I didn't really know. I read a book or two of his, but I didn't know actually how cool he was. I thought he was kind of lame growing up as a
You're like,
growing up in the
Dave
church.
Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey. But I was really impressed. Anyway,
Exactly.
so Dave Ramsey gives a great foundation on principles, on the biblical things. But Steve De Silva, I feel like, took it to a deeper level. It's called Prosperous Soul for a reason. He would help people. He's a finance guy, loves the Lord, and he would help people. And he would start to get frustrated because they would keep going back to not prospering with money. And he's like, what's going on here? What's going on here? They know the stuff. So he was like, oh, there's actually, your soul needs to be prospering because it's an outflow.
Right.
And so we need to look at what's going on in here. Everything that's going on in here is going to dictate what's going on here. So the poverty mentality is very prevalent.
Very prevalent.
And so he quoted C.S. Lewis in saying that there's always two extremes of a lie. So each lie has two extremes. And I feel like money has the same lie, right? Same thing. You can be in the poverty mentality and think, oh, I have to spend all this money right now because it's going to go away. Or you could say, I need to hold on to this money because it may not, I'm not going to get more.
Right.
Right? And so that's two ends of the spectrum that is very prevalent.
Right.
And so he's like, oh, we need to actually go into the middle of what the king, money is just money. What's going on here? Because you're believing so many lies on both ends of the spectrum, right?
Right.
You're not believing that God is going to take care of you.
Right.
Oh, I need to spend this all because it's going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to have any. Oh, I need to hold on to this because
Right.
either way, God's not your provider.
Right. It's kind of like that whole Dead Sea analogy. You have all these rivers and streams flowing into the Dead Sea, but there's no outflow.
Yeah.
And because there's no outflow, everything in the sea is dead.
Yeah.
So you're not actually, when you look at the greatest tributaries and lakes in the world, they're the ones that are thriving. They have an inflow and they have an outflow.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with money. And they actually can be attributed to a lot of things in the kingdom, actually.
Yes.
But since we're talking about money, that's what we're talking about today. But there has to be an outflow. There has to be an outlet.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no way for it to be overflowing.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, that's why Jesus talked about money so much.
Right.
It's such an easy example.
I
And
think
that's
it
why
was-
Paul did too.
I think that's what he talks about the most.
Yeah.
Money, which is bizarre if you think about it.
Yes.
Gee, why is Jesus talking about money so much?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, people also say Jesus was poor and blah blah blah. Well, yes, yes, he was compared to being in heaven.
Right.
Anyone would be poor.
Right.
When you compare to the riches of heaven.
And
He's
that's the
God.
foundation right there, because a lot of people forget that he emptied himself.
Yes.
That's why he was poor compared to heaven.
Yes.
Exactly.
I don't know. I bet he made the greatest furniture, whatever, made the greatest houses.
Oh,
you
yeah. Graham Cook, I listened to a sermon of him once, and he was saying, think about this whole perspective. He's born.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the wise men come and they give him those gifts, right?
Yeah.
Hey, here, kid, gold bar.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. That's the greatest startup capital for Joseph.
Yes.
Hey, I can start this carpentry business that I've always wanted to start, but I didn't have the money. Now I have it.
Yeah.
And that was gold, not necessarily just frankincense and myrrh, too, because those were not cheap products.
Yeah, they were expensive.
So did Jesus have money? I don't know, but I would argue that he had more than we think he did.
Yeah, I don't think he was walking around as a beggar.
No.
And even if he was, he wouldn't need the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I would imagine He's like, I'm hungry, so
Right.
Lord,
Right.
bless.
Well, just his cloak alone. I mean, what people don't understand, they always talk about his tunic.
Yep.
A tunic was actually a robe that was only worn by the wealthy,
Yeah.
because it was most of the clothing, the garb kind of just hung at the ankles, where a tunic was actually tied up at the mid calf area.
Mm.
So it was actually a very expensive robe.
It was seamless.
Right. And it was seamless too. So
Yeah.
like that robe alone was like worth like a ton of money. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So Jesus is poor, but he's wearing a tunic.
Right.
It doesn't jive with
Yeah.
the whole idea that he didn't use kingdom resources
Right.
to further the ministry, which obviously that's kind
Right.
of the most important part. So
Well, yeah, because I mean, Jesus did that today. He comes in this really expensive suit or whatever you want.
right, an Armani suit.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's talking to the poor. So many of us would be so offended by that.
Oh, absolutely.
We'd be like, why is he flaunting his wealth to these poor people? Why does he have to wear that? That's just so offensive. Why
Right.
he's just showing people how wealthy he is.
Right.
It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
yep, he is.
Exactly.
It's true. He's the king of the universe. So many people are gonna get to heaven and be so offended.
Right.
The streets are made of gold.
Exactly. Jewels overflowing everywhere, and they're going to be like, what is going on?
People would have been so offended to go to the temple in Jesus' day.
Right.
Romans wrote how rich the temple was. They were jealous of the wealth that they had. Romans,
Right.
the greatest empire
Ever.
of the time
Mm-hmm.
ever. They were jealous. Solomon, right?
Yes.
Solomon, people came to him because of his wealth and his wisdom. Like, just random stuff was made of gold.
Right.
Like, he had gold, like, utensils.
Right. And you think about it too, like, oh, so he asks for wisdom. God knew that he was going to like flourish
Right,
with his wealth
right.
because of it.
Because of wisdom.
Right. Because of wisdom.
It's just a byproduct. That's the thing. That's the difference. See, in the world, the goal is to get money. In the kingdom, it's a byproduct.
Right.
Like, the world's only motivation is to get money.
Right.
In the kingdom, the motivation is to live well and live righteously. And when you do that, the byproduct is that you become wealthy. It's an accident, really. It's like by accident. You don't actually have to do it. You don't have to purpose to do it. You have permission to do it because that's what wisdom does, right?
Right.
Like, it's just going to happen.
Right. So why do you think that Christians are, in general, not all Christians, of course,
Yeah.
are so offended by that?
Because we are really biblically illiterate as a people,
That's an
and
interesting
we're
perspective.
actually very historically illiterate as a people.
Mhm.
I'm reading this really interesting book on the Puritan movement,
Okay.
and so it's really this is going to be a funny conversation. Another thing that might be tackled later, but so icons,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
right? So religious icons, crosses, all that kind of stuff.
That's definitely a conversation for
Yeah,
later.
another conversation. But Puritans wanted everything very, very simple because it was a reaction to Catholicism's innate work and in corruption in a lot of ways.
Right,
There's the
exactly.
validity to a lot of what the Puritans wanted.
Right.
They wanted the pure gospel, simple gospel. They wanted it in their language. They wanted it to not be this showy thing. They wanted it to be really authentic.
Mhm.
Okay? Beautiful heart, right? But the overreaction to that was that, you don't have beautiful things. You don't make beautiful things. And so I think that has been so ingrained into
our culture.
into American culture.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting.
To the point where this is what's funny to me. Puritans hated icons. They did not like crosses. They did not like the King James version of the Bible because it was a state a sponsored Bible.
Right.
They love the Geneva Bible. So they got away from all of these icons, all of these fancy things, and they just wanted it simple. And I mean, there's so much truth to that. I love the authenticity of that. But the thing that happens within our culture is then, oh, like nice things are evil.
Right. It's like that double lie that you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's why I think part of it is that way. Because actually, when you look at Catholics, they don't seem to have as much of a problem as Protestants
That's interesting.
with like prospering and being wealthy. And
Right.
you know, like a lot of Catholics, they have a lot of money. Like Catholic families generally, I mean, not all the time, but like oftentimes they're pretty wealthy. They have, you know, businesses. They have a
Right.
lot of good culture within that.
And in turn, they're usually pretty generous
Yes.
to the church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Actually, okay, so this is what's funny. People get mad at rich people because they think they're not generous and they're just selfish. And you look at who actually is generous, it's the rich people because they actually have money to give.
Right.
Because they actually already were being generous before. They built that in.
Right. Exactly. You know, it's like you're 15 years old and you only make $40 a week or something like this, some random thing, and you tithe, and it ends up being $4.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like 30 and you're making $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
Right. So you're giving $100. You
Yeah.
know, so it's a thought process that's already ingrained in you.
Yes.
It's really, you're not looking at the amount that you're giving.
Yeah.
You're actually looking at, you know what, this is what I've already been doing, and I
Yeah.
already understand
Yeah.
how it works.
Right.
So
I think that's where a lot of the unsettledness around money and all that kind of stuff comes from. Is from that rich history of religious conflict of that time.
right.
It's like 1500s, 1600s.
Right.
But we're all affected by it.
Right.
But we're completely unaware
Right.
why this is even happening. Why we believe these things.
Yeah, and you wonder, like someplace like you said in Africa or wherever,
Yeah.
How their viewpoint is so drastic, or why their viewpoint is so drastically different than ours.
Yeah.
And that could be an explanation there with the Puritans.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah, and I would just, I would challenge anybody, who in here does God say to emulate that is poor?
that's good.
Who is a poor hero in here
Right.
that we're supposed to be like?
Right.
Abraham was filthy rich.
Filthy rich.
Jacob, filthy rich.
Job.
Isaac, every
And he
hero.
lost everything and got everything back and more.
Yeah.
So we can go on and on. Solomon. I mean, David.
Yeah. And the apostles, they gave everything, right? But I think because they were giving everything, they were really taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's when Paul was in Corinth, I had a buddy who was in Greece, and he posted a picture at I can't remember the lady's name, but her mansion basically.
Lydia?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was massive, man. Like the dude was living large.
Really?
Yeah. So we have these perspectives from like, okay, they're poor and they gave all and blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they lived like terrible lives. You know what I mean? Like they were
Right.
taken care of. Don't keep the ox from eating when he's plowing, right?
Right.
Like the Lord has always made it so that people are taken care of.
Right.
The priests were paid for. They didn't ever want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to wrestle with this idea of like, how come I'm offended by money?
Mm-hmm.
How come this is something that offends me when the Bible is not offended by money?
Right. Exactly.
Jesus wasn't offended by money. Jesus talked to a lot of rich people. He probably was friends with a lot of wealthy people.
I think a lot of things one thing that's really offensive when somebody talks about money, it's typically from a Christian's perspective is with somebody who actually has money.
Yeah.
They didn't see the process that it took to
Yes.
get there.
Yes.
They only see the result.
Yeah.
And then when let's say Dave Ramsey, I'm sure he has money.
He
I
has
mean,
so much money.
right. But how did he get there? So
Yeah.
a lot of people, they get offended by, let's say, Dave Ramsey, and they say, of course he can talk about money. He has money.
Yeah.
But that's the offensive part of it.
Right.
And I've heard other people say, well, yeah, that's the American dream, or different thought processes of
Yeah.
like, okay, but when we look at the kingdom, we have to understand that there's a lot more to that. There was a lot of things that went into that,
Yes.
including working hard.
Yes.
And working hard, I think, gets lost in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times Christians, they think that it's just going to pour on you because, okay, I've got all these promises in the Bible. I'm just waiting for you, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's biblical either. I mean,
Well, I've talked to you about abundance before,
oh, absolutely.
right? And
I love abundance. That the whole John 10:10.
Yeah, I came to give you life and life more abundantly.
Yes.
That's a promise of Jesus.
Of Jesus. New covenant.
New covenant. That includes money, everybody.
Yeah.
Just so you know, you can't be abundant without money.
Nope.
If you're poor, you feeling abundant, my guy? Like,
Right.
yeah, it's just,
Exactly.
like, oh man, I can't pay this bill. That's a terrible feeling.
Right.
That's not what Jesus wants for your life. I mean, he may call you to seasons of that so he can show you that he's going to provide for you.
Right.
But to be constantly living that way, I think that's not how it should
Even
go.
in the old covenant. I mean, you look at Elijah when he went 3 years and he was fed by a bird, for crying out loud.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was 3 years for that specific incident. I think it was 3 years for the widow. But anyways,
Right.
I might have misquoted that. But it was only a small season.
Right.
It was never the intent of God to
Right.
keep him poor,
Right.
keep him like starving.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm gonna die. I'm so
Right.
hungry.
Yeah, but the idea that if you're living abundantly, you it's less effort is a
Right.
complete lie.
Right.
Like, okay, you have a good growing season as a farmer. You're gonna rake it in, literally.
Right.
'Cause you have to
Literally.
you have to rake it in.
Right.
There's so much work.
Right.
There's so much work. You're prospering. You're living in abundance.
Right.
That requires more work from you than if you were not prospering.
Right.
If you were just making it by.
If it was a drought and nothing was growing, you wouldn't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have as much.
Right. And the thing, so God, in his kingdom, he's obsessed with increase.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he says is about increasing. Go forth and multiply.
Right.
Subdue the earth. That's
Yes.
go make disciples of all nations. If he didn't want things to increase, why are we still here?
Right. Exactly.
Right? And so he's obsessed about increasing everything.
Right.
Everything.
Yes.
Not just money,
every single thing.
not
you
just
do.
disciples, everything.
Your health, your mind, your wisdom, your everything.
Yeah. So you can't. I would argue that you can't actually fully be walking with Christ if you are not wanting to increase every part of your life.
Right.
Because if you're not wanting to increase in your finances, you're not wanting to increase in your generosity. You're not, and God is generous. That's just who he is. I mean,
Right.
that's he sneezes out blessings. Like it's not
He
even.
sneezes them out.
It's
What is it? There's like almost 8,000 or a little over 8,000 promises in the Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a perspective that we have to understand. Why is there that many?
yes,
Why is there that many? What are you trying to say, God?
yeah,
So I can apprehend those.
right,
And it includes wealth, includes prosperity of your soul, it includes all different kinds of things.
mm-hmm.
But we limit ourselves and we say, I don't deserve it, which I believe it all comes down to understanding who you are.
Yeah.
It really does. It comes down to identity
Mm-hmm.
and the poverty mindset, like you said earlier. So,
And so here's the thing that money is an indicator in your life.
Mhm.
So I would argue that if you are, in that poverty mentality with money, you're in a poverty mentality spiritually
pretty much with everything in your life.
with everything in your life.
Exactly.
And so the reason why I love this subject, why I love it, so much is because it's such an easy indicator for me to be like, oh, something's off here.
Right.
Something's off in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of that compartmentalization is that we think, oh, we can break things off, and it's like, oh, no. If this is how you believe about money, you believe this about God too.
Right. It's interesting too, because since you brought that up, so when I first became a Christian, I was just learning what tithing meant.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up to the tithe, and every week when I would give my offering or my tithe, when I finally got up to that point, there was this grudging thought process that I had to go in. I'm like, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling like this? So
Right.
Obviously then of course, I had to wrestle with the Lord on this, and he broke my hip. No, just kidding. He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't break my hip, but there is something inside of me that broke.
Right.
And once it broke, I never walked the same. I don't see money the same anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't want to wrestle with God on that.
Right.
They're okay with staying and giving grudgingly, or giving because you have to. There's nowhere in the Bible that says you actually have to. New covenant wise.
Right.
You don't have to. You don't.
Well, I mean, before the covenant,
yes.
right? Like Abraham was it wasn't like a forced giving.
Right.
It was like, no, this is a really good idea. You should do this.
Yes, really good idea.
And everybody who did it prospered, and whoever didn't
prosper.
Did not prosper.
Exactly.
So, like, God's not like gonna force you to do it,
right?
But He also doesn't force you to love Jesus,
right? And it's hard too, because a lot of people, when they give, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but as far as like when we give, we expect to receive. We want to. We're all learning, right? We're all growing, But we, as the church worldwide, we want to get to a place that when we give, we're not expecting to receive.
Yeah.
Because we've already have received. So we actually give from a place of abundance versus giving to get abundance.
I don't even think about it, man.
No, me either.
I have it automatically. I'm like, this isn't my money.
No.
It automatically goes every time I get paid. I'm like, I'm setting this up because I don't want to forget.
Right.
I'm just like, nope, this is God's money.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to touch it.
See, and that's an interesting perspective, because I don't set it up. So here's another perspective on that whole thought process. I don't set it up. So weekly, I actually have to like kill myself every single week to say, you know what, I'm doing this because I love God and I love His kingdom, and I want to invest in His kingdom. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm making sure that thing will never come back alive.
Right.
To me.
Yeah.
Because that's how I. So it's an interesting how two different people two different mindsets.
Yeah.
You don't want to forget. I'm me. I don't want to forget where I came from.
Right.
Because I know where I came from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's cool, and it just. I mean, like I've never gone without. Like I just have so many testimonies of like the Lord providing exactly what I need and what I want. Not even what I need. I've never gone without a need.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Like ever. I have so many testimonies when it comes with God providing, that like this whole idea of being generous and tithing, like it's never been an issue for me. It's like, no, God, I mean, He'll just make it happen. If it's supposed to happen, it's supposed to happen. I came back from first year of ministry school. I knew I was supposed to do all 3 years, but I had spent all my money on the first year. Like I had saved up for, a couple years to go to ministry school, but I had spent it all. Get home, can't find a job to save my life for whatever reason. And I'm like, what is going on? I know I'm supposed to do this. Like, what's happening? I'm reading the book that I'm supposed to read in order to get accepted into the next year. I'm like a month into summer, and I'm like, Lord, like, what are you said? And I'm reading through Mark, and there's all those and suddenly. I'm like, Lord, where's my and suddenly? Like, what the heck, man? Like, I'm doing all the things. How am I getting there? Like, I have no money. Sit down to read this book. Tabitha comes down the stairs, and she's like, we have a letter from our family, from Grandma and Grandpa. and we never we don't really have much contact with them.
Right.
And so we're like, this is weird. So we open it up, and there's 2 checks in there for $5,000. It's inheritance each. So it's inheritance money. My grandpa just passed away, and that covers the cost for
Wow.
tuition.
That's amazing.
And then the next day, I get a call, and I start a window factory job, and I worked like 5-6 days a week, 10-hour shifts. So I was raking in the money. And so a week later, then my mother gets a letter in the mail from the same family. And she opens it up, and she's like, oh, man, a $5,000 check. And then she looks at it again, and it's a $50,000 check.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was what's crazy, actually, okay? Because I was in ministry school. I was giving a buddy a ride home. And he's like, man, something crazy happened. My uncle just randomly gave my family $50,000. I said, dude, pray that for me. And he's like, yeah, Jesus, I just pray that you do that again for Samuel. That was all the prayer that happened. Fast forward,
Wow.
$50,000. I'm like, whoa. I was like, this is nuts. So not only did I was more than provided for, right, for tuition and then school, because I made like thousands of dollars really quickly because I was working overtime.
Right. Working hard.
Window factory job. Yeah, working really hard. I didn't really know how to use power tools, but they put me in they're like, I didn't know this until later, but they put me in the hardest position
Really?
in the window factory.
No
and
way.
they're like, we'll just see if he makes it or not. And they were so upset that I was leaving. I
no
couldn't
way.
go to school.
Exactly.
Because like every day there was a new person in that factory because it's a boring window factory job.
Very
It sucks.
monotonous, but
Yeah,
but you were the best.
yeah, they were like, the guy who hired me is like, this doesn't normally happen. Like, this is kind of, he didn't say this, but he's like, this is kind of special. Like, you're special. This is weird. Like, this is not normal. And I was like, oh, cool, thanks, man. But internally, every day I was freaking out because I'm like drilling through metal. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this right.
Wow.
And it was actually a very powerful time because I would be judging myself, hating on myself, and the Lord's like, Samuel, look around. I'd look around because I'm thinking everyone's looking at me, judging me. He's like, the only person judging you right now is you and the devil. I was like,
Interesting.
okay, all right. I see you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a tangent, but
No,
the
I think
Lord
it's
provides.
Yes, it's a good tangent though.
But yeah, because then I had to, there was abundance, but I had to work.
Right.
6 days a week, 10-hour shifts. I had to get up at 4:30 in the morning to drive half an hour to another city for this job. It was from 6. My shift started at 6 and ended at 3. So I didn't, that was the rest of my summer. I didn't go out hang out with anybody. I was like, I don't even know.
But it set you up for future
It set me up
success.
so well because I didn't have to worry about money that
Right.
whole year. It covered my whole year. I paid my rent in full, and I got a discount.
Exactly.
Boom.
Isn't that crazy how God works?
Yes, it is. It is crazy.
But that's the whole point of partnering. We look at God and we want Him to do all the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy for God to just bless me, Lord, and I just want to lay on my couch and watch Netflix. You know?
Yeah. One of my
and don't get me wrong, I think everybody would just love to lay on the couch and do Netflix.
Yeah.
You know, but
One of my friends, he posted this one time. I did school with him. He said, a lot of us are actually wanting the Lord to provide for us and bless us as verification that he validation of our life choices
that's a good choice. That's a good, I like that.
instead of actually
Yeah.
doing what we know we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
We want, oh, God bless me because I'm doing the right things.
Yes.
It's like, no, you're watching Netflix, man. You're poor because you're
Yes.
lazy.
Yeah, even I know I've shared this with you before, but the whole thing with my son said, we're standing there with a shovel expecting God to dig the hole.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful thought process.
Right.
If you think about it, yeah, God could dig the hole really easily.
And actually,
Just by a thought.
this is
The hole will be dug, you know?
yeah, this is a really important conversation actually when it comes to the conversation of money because culturally, the world they just want money to somehow float into their bank account.
Right.
I mean, you know that you run a business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I ran a business for a little bit. Really not. You're way more proficient at this than I am, but
Some days.
I've dealt with people
Right.
who want all of the benefits without the work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And yes, God promises that you will prosper, but there's so many things that laziness is equated to evil.
Right. I mean, there's so many different proverbs about that. I mean,
Yes.
So the lazy man, well, I can't remember how it goes with the hand in the bowl.
Yes,
I
yeah.
don't remember how it goes, but like he can't even lift his hand to his mouth.
Yes.
And it's an instrumental part of prospering and wealth and money is
Mhm.
you actually have to do something about it.
Well, it's because we've actually vilified work as well.
Hmm.
We vilified wealth and we vilified work. Like work is something that we have to do. An actual biblical principle. We're made to work
Right. From the very beginning.
from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
God has set aside things that only we can do.
Yeah. You wonder if it's like because when you look at the United States over the course of, and I say the United States, but I really mean the West. When you go back 100 years, they worked really hard.
Yep.
And we as a country prospered.
Yes.
And now we're in this consumeristic mentality. And so we have this thought process, I work because I have to so I can buy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of I work because I need to work to have my soul prosper.
Yeah. To be prosperous, to be,
Yeah.
Proud of myself.
Right. I mean, you look at farmers right now. I mean, farmers in general they work really hard, but for what ends? They're not necessarily, they prosper really well. Farmers are pretty well off.
Yeah.
In general. But they work really hard because they enjoy what they're doing. They enjoy hard work. I have never met a farmer who doesn't actually love to work hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is hard work.
Yes, because it is hard work.
You can't.
Otherwise, they'd quit and be
Yes.
like, I'm out, peace out, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. It's very true.
it's interesting. I just see that, and to keep that mentality, though,
Mhm.
it seems like it's a struggle for a lot of people. So
Well, yeah, and it's so we're image bearers of God. He said, "Let us make man in our image."
Mhm.
God works.
yes, exactly.
Even
Well,
when I don't see it, you're working.
Exactly.
We sing those songs, we don't think about it. He's
Yeah.
always working. He's
Right.
working,
Right.
and yet he's always at rest.
Right. Well, that's a different.
That's a different subject. But he's always working.
Right.
And I think this is the enemy doesn't like when we work.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like when we prosper. So
Right.
what does he attack? He goes overtime. He vilifies wealth, and he vilifies work. Because my generation and younger, work is like, oh man,
Right.
I gotta work.
Yeah. I don't feel like going today.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call in.
Oh, I worked really hard this week. I think I'm gonna take a couple days off. Yeah, that's not actually gonna prosper your life. That's not just your bank account, but your soul, your whole being. And I don't think it's a coincidence that suicide, substance abuses, depression are on the rise.
Right.
Because work, like I lost my job in 2020. I went freaking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have never been fired, never been like even in a position where somebody would even think about firing. Like I was always one of their best employees. They always wanted to keep me around, promotions kind of deal, kind of all that stuff.
Right.
So when I lost my job, it was just this like weird thing because I know it wasn't my performance because it was COVID.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, it still messed with my idea of like, my self-worth.
That's like your identity.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, this is, and I went kind of crazy. I'm like, I was like, oh, I'll be able to do all these things. It wasn't fun after a while. It was fun for like a week or two.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 2-3 weeks at the most. Yeah.
And then I was just like, oh man, this is hard. I
Mhm.
can't do this. Like, I don't understand people who can do this. I just became grumpy. I just got grumpy, irritated, and I was just bored.
Right.
We need to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting how that translates. Just the money to your soul, like we talked about earlier, your soul
Yeah.
prospering.
Yes.
There's something to be said when you do something, when you create something.
Yep.
It's you can look at it and say, "Wow, I played a part in that."
Yes.
And-
I think it's because we're acting in the nature that God gave us and that we are His image of.
right.
So, I think it's more important than we really even can state.
Right.
Because here's what even was weirder for me. When I was unemployed, I made more money than I was when I was working.
Of
And you
course.
would think that I would feel great about that. I felt so bad about that.
Right.
I felt terrible about that. I actually made more money than I do right now
I believe it.
because like the COVID stuff. They were like, "Oh, give them more money." I'm
Give
like,
them more money.
I'm sitting around playing Call of Duty right now, making bank. It was like
Blows your mind.
I was just like I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like this is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine the mind of people who are continually doing that. I think it really wears on people's soul and their
Absolutely.
self-worth, and
Absolutely.
it keeps them in poverty. Actually,
No, I agree because what happens is too the world is designed it so that way we become, what's the word I'm looking for, domesticated.
yeah,
And we as a people of the kingdom are not meant to be domesticated.
no,
And so when we look at the whole domestication process
Right.
of work
Yeah.
and receiving from the government
Yeah.
and this kind of thing, we've actually put ourselves in this position where we're just like herded like sheep.
slaves
Slaves, but of the world, so
of
to
the
speak.
of the world systems,
Right.
and that's why I mean, this is another subject of I mean it entails money, but debt. Like that's why the Bible's like very much against debt.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, let's talk about COVID. So many people were like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I can't afford not to. Like nurses.
Right.
Like, I don't agree with this, but if I don't, because you're living in astronomical amounts of debt
Right.
that you're stuck.
That you incurred through education,
Right, whatever,
the thought
right?
processes, whatever,
Yeah.
however you got there.
Right. So it's not prospering your soul because you're not free to,
No.
like, I disagree with this. I can walk away.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like obviously like a house payment. That's like kind of inevitable part of
Yeah,
life.
that's what I was gonna say.
But,
So
like-
make sure you guys don't understand. We're not
Yeah.
talking about a house payment.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a car payment.
Yeah, like,
if you
you
pay off
can-
those as quickly as possible, awesome.
Yeah.
You
There's
know?
not like, but like living, because I was blown away when I was reading all these materials and like
Yeah.
really I like, because at the time when I delved into this, I was mid-20s, just
Mhm.
got married, just had a baby, living in a one-bedroom apartment. I'm like, how are these people doing this?
Right.
They have like these brand new cars.
Mhm.
They have these like they're living in these huge apartments, and this is California
Right.
where everything's ridiculously expensive. So I'm just like,
yeah.
this doesn't make no sense to me. And then I'm like, oh, they're in so much debt.
Yeah.
They're just crazy and they don't own anything.
Right.
They're like paycheck to paycheck, and
Mhm.
they're slaves to money. Is what
Slaves.
it is.
And the system is in general
Yeah.
the worldly system.
Yeah, the worldly system.
Not talking government or politics here. We're talking
Right.
about the worldly system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then your motivation, again, what is your motivation now? Get more money. So it's a constant hamster wheel of
Mhm.
I need more money
Mm-hmm.
because I need this car. Why do you need this car? Why do you need the fancy new car?
Exactly.
Because I need to get to work. Yeah, I mean, you could buy a used car for like $5,000. Why do you need the brand new car?
Right.
Uncomfortable questions.
Very uncomfortable questions.
Why is it that you need this really, like, you actually can't afford this? Why do you need this?
Yeah, it's so true. But not dissing buying a new car.
No, I mean, if you could afford a new car, that's also the other thing. Wealthy people, like super wealthy Christians, feel guilty for buying a really nice car.
Yeah, I think Chris Folleton uses that story once or twice about getting the new Corvette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's always a car guy. He started off in business as a mechanic.
Right.
And he always loved cars.
Yeah.
And people send so much hate mail. I mean, it's a church, so
yeah. You shouldn't have money because you're a pastor.
Yeah. But they don't know all the things that they had to do to get there.
Right.
Like
the beginning to the end. Exactly.
Like him and Bill Johnson, both their families at a time lived together.
Oh, that I did not know.
And they have, I think they each have 3 children. So
I think you're right.
And they would scrape together. They would get all the change.
10 people in one house.
Yeah, all the change they had together on a Sunday to go get a treat and buy a tub of ice cream.
Wow.
For their family, you know?
Yeah. Wow,
that's just the best they could do. And they were making them, you know? And like, it irritates me when people are like, oh, they're just doing it for the money or whatever. I'm like, you have no idea what these people went through.
No, exactly.
No idea. But, you know, it's like, okay, you have this really successful business person and he wants to buy, you know what car I really think is cool? That Mercedes SUV that's like super boxy.
Oh, yeah.
It's like $150,000.
Yeah, it's got a specific name to it. Oh,
yeah.
I can't remember.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I just think it's elegant,
Yes.
it's beautiful, it's rugged, all at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, that's so beautiful.
Someday.
Maybe one day. That'd be like, oh man, that'd be hard for me actually.
Yes.
Be like,
And we're going to offend all you people that are offended with money.
$150,000 car. I'm like, I don't know. I see that car all the time. I'm like, oh babe, look at it. It's like, I don't know if I could do it though. $150,000. That's a lot.
Right. And the funny part is when you look at like some of these, like, let's use Chris Folleton as an example. And when people get offended because he finally does have this money and he buys himself a Corvette, the world elevates money.
Right.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are the first to point fingers at people in the church who have money, even though they actually are the ones that have elevated money.
Yes.
Which is interesting if you actually.
It is. And then we play right into it.
Right.
And we're like, you shouldn't have this money.
You shouldn't have this private jet.
Like, well, I use it.
Did I push that button? Sorry.
But that's the thing, though. Like, if I'm traveling every month, that's a good allocation of money.
Absolutely.
It saves me time. It saves people effort. I can get to more events.
Right. Exactly.
I can spread the gospel more.
Exactly.
If Paul could have had a private jet, he would have had a private jet, man.
Right.
Like, I could go anywhere in the world.
Right.
Whenever I want to.
Right.
It's not on an airline system that's deteriorating quickly.
He doesn't have to jump on a camel. He's going to be like, I'm going to fly to Brazil today.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like the struggle of, you know, these people who have wealth and then it's like, I want this car. Like Dave Ramsey told this story. And I think it was that car, $150,000 Mercedes.
Oh, what is it called? I can't remember what it's called, but go ahead.
It's beautiful.
I know. I agree with you. That's an awesome truck.
He felt so guilty. And he's like, dude, this is like actually no amount of money for you. Like, this is nothing for you. Why do you feel bad about it? He's like, oh, people are going to judge me. He's like, well, who cares?
Yeah, people's perspectives.
Like, they don't know how, and he's like, he's one of the most generous people I've ever met. He gives money away all the time. People don't know that.
Interesting.
Get the car you want, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's not anybody else's business. And it's like because these people have a good perspective of money. And if Dave Ramsey always says, we're just managing this for God.
Right.
We're managing this money for God.
Or stewarding.
Stewarding, yeah.
Is another good word.
Yeah, another good word. Stewarding, managing. I'm just a manager. And when you do that, I mean, like, let's say you make $5 million a year, $150,000 car.
There's nothing.
That's like nothing
Right.
at all.
Right.
So, but here's the so Judas.
I thought we would go there today.
Judas.
Mm-hmm.
He's offended by extravagant worship
Yes.
because it would be this amount of money.
Mhm.
And so, she breaks that alabaster jar,
Right.
and that's what he takes away from it.
Right.
Not the extravagant worship, not the extravagant like laying of like this beautiful event, right?
Mm-hmm.
What he's taking away is, oh, that could have been given to the poor. Does that not sound familiar?
Well, in reality, is he saying that could have been given to the poor, or was he really in his heart saying that could have been given to me?
That's actually the key right there,
Mhm.
because that could have been given to the poor, quote unquote, but he's pilfering from the purse.
Right.
So he's like, oh, I could have actually gotten way more money.
Right. From that thought process, is this
Yes.
that whole thing that's going on?
Yeah, and this will offend almost everybody probably because I've seen this.
I've seen it too.
I have lived every 29 years of my life in the church. And money has always been a weird thing for people. There's always people who are weird about money.
Right.
Oh, we shouldn't be buying that because we're church. Why? Tell me where it says that.
Right.
Where does it say we can't have a coffee shop?
Right.
Where does it say we shouldn't have lights?
Right. I mean, here in Green Bay, there's a beautiful coffee shop that's run by a church in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And it is extremely offensive to Christians.
Right.
So a lot of Christians, not all Christians, of course, but some Christians that I know. And it's
Right.
like,
Why?
why?
Business is a good thing. Business is a
Right.
beautiful thing.
And it's this place where a lot of people and pastors will come and they'll
Yeah.
talk to people, counsel people, have meetings.
Right.
It's a good place of
Yeah.
expansion of the kingdom.
Yeah.
It's actually for kingdom purposes.
And not only can people come there, but they're able to provide jobs for people.
Right.
This is what is exciting to me.
Yes.
I can actually provide people's livings
Right.
if I manage this well.
It's so crazy. It really is.
I'm like, oh, there's no jobs. Well, yeah. Oh, there's no good Christian places to work. Well, yeah. Because we have vilified wealth, which actually makes way for business, which makes way for other people to prosper.
Prosper and to attain that same wealth.
Exactly. And so it's the Judas spirit of, we feel entitled to this.
Mm-hmm.
I could have had this.
Right.
I should have gotten this.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because there's been times where, as a very vague example, where I've actually given to money to, let's say, a homeless person or a person on the street, and when you're sharing the testimony and the excitement of it,
Yeah.
you see people squirm.
Yep.
Because, and obviously I don't know the person's heart or anything like that, but you wonder, why are they squirming?
Mhm.
Right? Do they feel guilty? Do they feel that whole Judas thing?
Yep.
What does that look like? What's really going on?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a celebration.
Yes.
It's a celebration.
It's that older brother syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And that poverty. I know that orphan spirit,
Right.
where it's like you're not able to celebrate that because you don't believe God would do that for you.
Right.
You're an orphan.
Right. Exactly.
You don't believe God is good, like really good.
Mm-hmm.
You don't believe that for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You may believe that for other people, but when you hear about that for other people, you get offended.
Right.
And you're like, oh, that could have been for me. That
Yeah.
should have been for me.
So I kind of feel like I'm not changing the subject, but kind of like I feel like this direction is coming up. But like, now how do people change their perspective? How do we shift from, okay, I hear what you guys are saying, but how do I get from here to there?
Yeah. Well, I would just say, okay, number one, this is the order I would go in for really good information on this subject. Dave Ramsey,
Mhm.
watch, great resources, tons. They've updated it a lot because all I knew was Dave Ramsey from like 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like really quite cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
But now they have like tons of great content on a lot of different subjects. So I would binge that, read the books. Then I would actually go read The Prosperous Soul because it brings it in here.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all outside principles of why it works, great things to know,
Right.
um,
The tools.
the tools. And then The Prosperous Soul says, okay, what's going on inside of you?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on inside of you that you're not prospering? Your
Right.
soul isn't prospering. Your money is the indicator, one of the indicators that you're not prospering.
Right.
It's just an indicator. That's all it is. And then I would read this book, Thou Shalt Prosper, because it goes into even more of a really deeper perspective of how those principles work. And like really, for me, it was fun because I was like, wow, that's so insightful.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I just challenge people to read the Bible and see what God says about money.
Right.
Because once I realized, like, oh man, there really is no person in the Bible that God wants me to emulate that is poor.
Right.
There's none. There's no person like that. I mean, people say, well, yeah, Jesus. I'm like, that's only because he left heaven,
Right.
where the streets are made of gold.
Right.
Anyone who leaves heaven is poor.
Right.
That comes here,
Right.
like
Yes.
10 times out of 10.
Even the richest person here on earth is poor compared to heaven.
Yes, Bill Gates has nothing.
Right.
Like
It's nothing.
it's nothing
It's
compared.
dust.
Yeah, to the riches of heaven.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would start on the information wise, and then it just challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself and start giving.
Yeah. It's another thing too that I would encourage people to understand that. As I mentioned earlier, there's like 8,000-ish promises
Yeah.
right, in the Bible, right? So when we look at abundance life and we look at promises of God, right? A lot of people like to stand on those promises and say, this is what God promises, but yet they never see results. They
Yeah.
never see these kind of things happening in their lives. Graham Cook I have read and reading again in one of his books, he puts it very plainly that all promises are relational.
Yes.
They're only as good as the person who makes them. So if God gives me all these promises, if I have a faulty mindset or a faulty way of looking at God, I will never reap the benefits of those promises because I have set myself up for failure.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe him because I don't have a relationship with
Right.
him. So ultimately, when we're talking about money and abundance and wealth and promises, it all comes down to relationship with him.
Yes.
And that's really the simplistic starting point.
Seek first the kingdom.
Right.
But even more so, I feel like even more so than seek first the kingdom, because you could be seeking the kingdom and not be seeking Jesus.
Right.
That's what's crazy.
Right.
You could know the Bible. I have a grandfather who's been a minister for my entire existence, for my dad's entire existence, doesn't actually believe in Jesus.
Really?
He knows the Bible. He knows all the things.
Wow.
You can know those things and not know Jesus.
Right. Exactly.
You can go to, like, are we being discipled? I say this all the time. Are we intentionally being discipled? Because in the West, we've made Jesus an attachment to our life instead of him being the center of our life, and we attach things to that.
Right.
You know, like every part of our life should be centered around Jesus. What does Jesus think of this? That's what a disciple would do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you would ask a rabbi, can I be your disciple?
Right.
You were supposed to follow him everywhere. Everywhere. Ask him, like, how do you do this? How do you cut this? How do you, like, everything.
Right.
And you could, all these disciples would have debates and opinions on what is in the Torah or whatever. And then the rabbi would say, no, it's this way. And everyone's opinion is now, no, it's this way.
Right. Because of relationship.
Because of relationship.
Right.
And, you know, it's
Yeah, because ultimately, I know people that have read Dave Ramsey or maybe this book or whatever, and they're all great kingdom principles.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
But the resource that is never tapped first
No.
is your relationship with him.
Yeah.
And that's really disheartening to me. It actually makes me really sad because
Yeah.
you know, it's not about getting money. It's like when you step into a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Think about the disciples. You know, Jesus goes and he says, "Okay, I'm going to make you fishers of men." Right?
Yeah.
Well, how does that have to pertain to money? Think about that. They needed resources.
Yeah.
But they trusted the resources were going to be there, and they just believed that that was going to happen.
Right.
You know, or the promise to Abraham. I mean, he just believed, and it
Right.
happened.
Yeah.
And so, well, why do you believe? The only reason you believe is because you have a relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, at least that's my perspective, adding on to what you
No,
were saying.
100%, man. Like, none of this actually matters if we're not actually going to him first.
Mhm.
Like, all of this knowledge, and I mean, I have people I know who went to like one of the best ministry schools I think right now in the world.
Yeah.
They don't love the Lord anymore. They don't.
I know a few from myself. Yeah.
They went there, they experienced all these things, they saw all these things, and now they walked away.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't actually make that a personal thing.
Right.
They didn't create that in themselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they stepped into a culture and they benefited from it, but they didn't make it
Part of who they are.
part of who they are.
Yeah, there's a great YouTube video by Roland Baker, Heidi Baker's husband, and basically understanding what Samuel was just talking about. It's called "What Will It Take for You to Love Jesus?"
Yeah.
And it's an interesting perspective. Like, you know, like he talks about people that were healed,
Yeah.
yet they don't walk with Jesus,
Right.
or they have this abundant life, but they're no longer walking with Jesus.
Right.
God gives them all these things, but yet ultimately your foundation needs to be there
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
for it to be beneficial to and have a prosperous soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you're following Jesus, like other people's money isn't my business. I don't
really care.
I don't care, man.
Right.
Like I'm following the Lord, and we need to be okay with our story. We
Right.
need to be excited about our own story.
Right.
This is where I'm at right now. And I'm following the Lord. I don't have $1 million right now, but
Right.
I'm wealthy.
Right.
Man, I live such a good life. Man, if you feel like you are being gypped in life, I encourage you to go on a mission trip to Africa.
Oh, I can't. I would love that. Not because I feel gypped in life.
Right. But like, dude, your perspective on everything changes when you have to go poop in a hole. Too real, maybe, for everybody.
No, I
But,
love it. I love it.
like,
That's awesome.
There's flies everywhere.
Right.
There's just like this slit in the ground, and you got a little bit of a wall around you, and you got to pop a squat, and you got to do your business.
People walking past.
Yeah. Kid you not. I needed to go, right? I needed to go to the restroom. And I say that, I mean, wasn't a restroom that anyone here would choose.
No, there wasn't a roll of toilet paper and running water where you go wash your hands or
It's like
anything.
this room of holes, basically.
Wow.
Slotted holes. It had overflowed. So
Oh.
I'm stepping in
Other people's
other people's,
stuff.
yeah, to go to use the restroom. You know, and this is how people are living. You know what I mean? Like they're and they're so hungry for the Lord. Like this is what it blows my mind because people will walk not thousands, lots of miles.
Right. 100 miles, we'll say.
Yeah, to come to church for the entire day. And they'll hang out. And go to a church service in Africa is a party, man.
Oh, I believe it.
They you know those like
Makes me jealous.
those plastic chairs
Yeah.
that you put on your lawn or whatever.
Yeah.
Whole room, they're doing their songs, and they're all dancing, and it gets to the point where like they're just like this the switch, you know, and it's like, oh, we gotta go harder. So they all grab their chairs and like Jesus, like I'm just like, this is church, man. They have way more fun than we do.
And they are the richest people in the world,
Yes.
even though they have no money.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Actually, you know what's funny? The nicest cars I've been in have been in Africa.
Oh, I believe it. That just blows my mind, but I believe it.
I went a Range Rover. It was a nice car. Cause I mean, bouncing around in these big buses, you're like, oh.
Right.
Went in that Range Rover, I was like, wow.
These are comfy seats.
These are nice. But yeah, I just, you know, those things change your perspective, even on food. Like, you're eating there. I was there for like, I think a week or two. And it's like, they switch things around, but it's all the same spices. It's all really the same ingredients.
Right.
And we're, you know, we have so many options. Like, if we get bored of our food.
That is so true. They really do.
And they're like, man, oh, I get food today.
Yes.
We have it so good, man.
Yeah. Like I said, that whole consumerism type.
Yes.
The whole thought process of what that looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, water. We were driving in this part of Kampala, I think, Uganda, and it smelled terrible because that was the trash. But kids would walk miles and miles to get water from there.
Wow. That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like, wow, I am such a butthole. Like, I'm just a terrible person. Like,
right.
I'm complaining.
And that's the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, like the whole thought process, like you're saying, like we look at all these things and like, oh, we're taking all these things for granted.
Yeah.
But that doesn't nullify that, hey, money and wealth
Right.
is used for kingdom purposes.
Right. Because we brought systems and things and money, things that cost money, to help them prosper.
Right.
Like, we went on this island in Lake Victoria to bring a water filtration system to that island for these people, because they were bathing and putting their waste, human waste, all their waste into this lake and getting their water from it.
Oh, wow.
So they were getting sick, obviously.
Right.
So we brought the system. Like, that takes money. That took lots of money. Get it there, get us there,
Right.
get across this lake. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you can't, you know, and they tell us that. It's like, hey, don't go overboard when you get home and, like, take all the toys away from your kids, because kids in Africa don't have them. It's not, these things are evil. Like, you know, you need to,
You can never play with a toy again.
Yes.
Here's a stick.
here you go, ungrateful child. So, yeah, but it just shifts your whole mentality.
Yeah.
It's like,
It really
oh,
does.
I have so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's money is not the root of all evil.
No.
It is not the root of all kinds of evil. It's a necessary tool. Not to say that I'm saying the Bible's wrong. I think what we misquote it, and we put it in this perspective, in the same playing field as the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's really is. It's a heart matter.
Right.
And what are we doing with it?
Yeah.
Because it really has nothing to do with money. It has to do where's your heart?
Yes.
Where's your heart? And the only way that can be transformed is by having a relationship.
Yeah.
That's the only way you can be transformed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we're wrapping up. Yeah.
I think so too.
Well, thanks for watching the first Jew and the Gentile podcast.
Don't throw stones. Please.
Yeah, don't throw stones. Like and subscribe. Comment if you feel like there's a subject that you would like to be hit on, or if there's a perspective about money that you would like to have some discussion on, or if you have questions. Yeah, comment on this, and we'll see you next time.
an hour and a half longer than we need to just talking with these voices.
Yeah, I unplugged it even.
Why is that funny?
Because I don't know, but like anything.
I'm like, why am I laughing?
We'll just sit here talking and tell stories.
Because it's so much more entertaining. Anything you say is so much more funny.
I want to run around and get a balloon of helium.
Yeah.
Just for this afternoon.
There you go.
Okay. Peace out.
Nice.
The claw. Even the laughs are just 10 times better.
It's like an echo.
Cool.
I haven't even begun to mess with it.
I'm not scared, but I'm like. We might get a little backlash on that, but it's okay.